chosen ones. There comes a time in every chosen one's journey when the tables quietly turn, not with noise, not with revenge, but with divine timing that humbles everyone involved. For so long, you were misunderstood. People saw your silence and thought it meant weakness. They mistook your kindness for naivety, your patience for passivity. But you were never weak. You were simply being prepared, refined by the very fire that was meant to destroy you. Every rejection, every misunderstanding, every rumor whispered behind your back was molding you into someone stronger, wiser, and deeply aligned with your higher purpose. And now, without saying a single word, you've become the very person they once said you'd never be. You didn't fight back with anger. You elevated with grace. You didn't argue. You transformed. You didn't expose them. You outgrew them. And now they see it. The same people who laughed at your dreams now fall silent when your name is mentioned. The same voices that once mocked you now hesitate to speak because deep inside, they know what you carry can't be destroyed. They don't clap for you publicly. They don't comment under your posts, but their eyes follow your every move because something in you unsettles their spirit, yet draws their soul closer at the same time. You were never the problem. You were the prophecy they couldn't understand. They tried to break you, but now they study your strength. They used to whisper your name in gossip. Now they whisper it in curiosity. The truth is simple. They secretly admire you now. And it's not pride to say this. It's the natural consequence of spiritual growth. Chosen ones. From the very beginning, there was something about you that couldn't be defined. Something subtle, something ancient, something they could feel even when you said nothing. You didn't need to announce your worth, you simply carried it. The way you walked, the way you observed the world, the way you listened instead of competing to be heard, it all spoke a language their spirit understood, but their ego refused to translate. You were light, not the kind that shines to be seen, but the kind that quietly exposes what's hidden, and that's what unsettled them. When a soul carries truth, it unconsciously reveals what's false around it. You never tried to make anyone feel small. You never tried to outshine anyone. But your presence alone made the masks fall. They could no longer pretend to be who they said they were when you were near, because something in you, that raw authenticity, forced them to confront themselves. They didn't dislike you. They disliked what they felt when they were around you. Your calm energy highlighted their chaos. Your silence made their words feel empty. Your humility reminded them how much of their identity was built on pretending. At first, they didn't know what to call it. Some labeled it arrogance, others called it weird, aloof, or too quiet. But what they were truly saying was, "You make me uncomfortable because you are not playing the same game." You were never competing for attention. You were seeking alignment. You didn't want the spotlight. You wanted peace. And those who thrive on noise cannot understand those who are nourished by stillness. You see, most people are used to power that shouts, dominates, or demands. But your power whispered. It came from somewhere sacred, from self-control, from self-awareness, from a deep connection with something greater than the material world. They couldn't see that. They only saw that you couldn't be manipulated like others. They tried to measure you through their lens of ego, but your value was spiritual, not social. And so, when they couldn't define you, they decided to dismiss you. That's what the human mind often does. It rejects what it can't understand. But still, you didn't react. You didn't fight for approval. You didn't try to convince anyone of your worth. You let time and truth do their quiet work. And that confused them even more, because people expect those they belittle to crumble. They expect silence to mean defeat. But chosen ones have learned that silence is not surrender. It's strategy. It's where your spirit regains its clarity, where your energy resets, where you allow divine timing to rearrange the board in your favor. And in that silence, you kept building, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. You outgrew the rooms where you were once judged. You healed from wounds they hoped would define you. You became the proof that the calm ones, the kind ones, the quiet ones were never weak. They were just focused on the invisible work. Every storm they sent your way became the very wind that lifted you higher. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every rejection stripped you of dependency. They thought they were taking your power, but they were actually shaping your resilience. And as your energy shifted, so did their perception. The very light they once tried to dim became the glow they couldn't ignore. But that realization that you were never beneath them was something they weren't ready to accept. They saw it. They felt it. But admitting it, that would mean confronting their own illusions. So instead, they covered admiration with silence and respect with distance. What they saw in you was something their spirit longed for, but their ego couldn't handle: peace. And peace, to the unhealed, looks like mystery. To those trapped in comparison, your freedom feels like rebellion. That's why they misunderstood you. Not because you were wrong, but because you were rare. Chosen ones. Life has a sacred rhythm. It may seem slow, but it never forgets what's true. As you kept walking in your quiet truth, the balance began to shift. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but naturally. The same voices that once mocked you began to soften. The same eyes that rolled in disbelief began to linger longer. And while no one said it out loud, the air around you began to change. Respect began to replace ridicule. You didn't have to clap back. You didn't have to prove anyone wrong. You just kept being you. And that consistency, that unwavering grace, became your loudest statement. People started noticing something they couldn't explain. You were winning, but not in the usual sense. You weren't chasing status, but peace followed you. You weren't seeking validation, but recognition found you anyway. You weren't trying to look powerful. You simply were. They tried to understand how someone they dismissed could move through storms and still smile. How someone they gossiped about could still walk with kindness. How someone who was overlooked could glow with such quiet confidence. The truth began to unfold slowly in their hearts. You were not just surviving, you were transforming. And transformation is something even your enemies cannot deny. Behind closed doors, some began to study you. They started rewatching old moments, remembering the times they laughed at you, and realizing how wrong they were. They began asking themselves questions they never dared to before. How did they keep going? How did they forgive and move on? How did they manage to stay calm when I would have fallen apart? That's when admiration slipped in through the cracks of their pride. It didn't come as applause. It came as quiet reflection. They didn't say your name publicly, but they whispered it in their thoughts. You became the silent benchmark for growth, the example of what true strength looks like when it's born from pain. Because deep down, even they know. Anyone can shine when life is easy, but it takes divine strength to shine after being shattered. Your resilience became your reputation. Your peace became your power. And without realizing it, those who once stood against you began to absorb your energy, trying to find in themselves what they once tried to destroy in you. They began meditating, reading, seeking peace, not knowing that your influence had reached them. They started imitating your calm, your discipline, your grace, and though they'll never admit it, they secretly want to know the source of your light. You see, this is how divine justice operates. Quietly, perfectly, without needing revenge. The universe doesn't humiliate your enemies. It enlightens them through your evolution. They must watch the person they once doubted become the very proof of divine alignment. That's not punishment. That's transformation through contrast. Now, every time they see you, they feel a strange mix of emotions: regret, awe, curiosity, respect. They're realizing that you were never the underdog. You were the mirror, the reminder of what authenticity looks like in a world addicted to pretense. And as that truth begins to dawn on them, something deeper starts to unfold. A shift not just in how they see you, but in how they see themselves. Because when the chosen rise, the whole field of energy around them begins to awaken. Even your former enemies are being pulled into that light, whether they realize it or not. Chosen ones. In the invisible realm of energy, everything is connected. Every thought, every emotion, every intention carries a vibration. And when the vibration of a chosen one begins to rise, it shifts the balance of every room they walk into. This isn't superstition, it's resonance. When your soul starts operating on a higher frequency, it naturally exposes what is dense, heavy, or false around it. It's not about superiority, it's about alignment. You begin to harmonize with peace, while others are still resonating with conflict. You align with grace, while others are still vibrating in fear. And so, without a word, your very presence becomes confrontational, not to their conscious mind, but to their energy. You see, the ego feels attacked when truth walks in, even when that truth says nothing. That's why they once felt uneasy around you. Your vibration wasn't matching the frequency of drama or competition. It was too still, too aware, too free. And freedom scares those who are still enslaved by illusion. But as your energy continued to evolve, through forgiveness, patience, and surrender, something profound began to happen. Your light stopped merely exposing what was false. It began healing what was broken. Those who once rejected you began to feel a strange pull toward you. They couldn't name it, but it felt magnetic, like standing near sunlight after living too long in the shadows. They didn't realize that their spirit wasn't admiring you as a person. It was remembering itself through you. Your frequency reminded them of what they had forgotten, that they too were once pure, hopeful, and connected. Your peace reawakened their buried desire for wholeness. This is the spiritual paradox. Those who once hurt you often become your greatest silent students. They begin to watch not out of malice, but curiosity. Your forgiveness confuses them because it disarms their ego. Your calmness unsettles them because it reveals their restlessness. Your authenticity humbles them because it shows how far they've drifted from their own truth. And yet, through all of that, you teach. Not with sermons, but with example. Without preaching, you become a message. Without effort, you become evidence. Your life itself becomes a sacred scripture, written in the language of vibration. Because in the spiritual dimension, words don't teach. Frequency does. The universe communicates not through noise, but through resonance. And your vibration, refined by pain and purified through surrender, is now broadcasting a truth that others cannot ignore. You've become what some ancient traditions call a mirror soul, one who reflects, not to judge, but to awaken. When people look at you, they don't just see you. They see what they could become if they chose healing over ego, and that reflection is both beautiful and terrifying to them. This is why, over time, their hostility softens. The resistance fades. Even those who once envied you begin to feel a subtle respect, because something in their own spirit starts to remember. This is what peace looks like. This is what grace feels like. This is what truth sounds like when it walks quietly through the world. It's not that you changed who you were. You simply returned to what you always were. Light in human form. And light, no matter how long it's hidden, always finds its way back into recognition. Your enemies are sensing that now. They can't articulate it, but they feel it every time your name crosses their mind. It's not obsession. It's resonance. The same energy that once pushed them to misunderstand you is now pulling them toward you, hoping to decode the mystery of your peace. But what they don't realize is this: your peace didn't come from luck. It came from surrender. It came from dying to the old self, from letting go of illusions, from choosing to heal when bitterness would have been easier. And now, that healed energy is the very light guiding others out of their own darkness. That's the quiet justice of the universe. It never screams. It never rushes. It simply transforms. And through your transformation, it turns enemies into witnesses, doubters into seekers, and pain into purpose. Chosen ones. Psychology teaches us that envy and admiration are twin emotions, born from the same seed of comparison. The difference is simple. Envy looks at someone's light and says, "Why not me?" Admiration looks at that same light and whispers, "Maybe me too." Those who once envied you are now shifting toward the second. It's subtle, invisible, but powerful. They no longer want to destroy your peace. They want to understand it. When the human mind witnesses someone rise above pain without external help, something profound happens inside. It challenges deeply held beliefs about limitation, identity, and worth. They once believed strength comes from dominance. Then, they watched you thrive through humility. They once thought power meant control. Then they saw you master yourself instead of others. They once equated success with material wealth. Then they saw your happiness flow from simplicity. And that contrast forces the mind into reflection, because when what they see contradicts what they believe, their ego begins to tremble. They start replaying memories. They recall the moments when they laughed at your silence, mocked your slowness, or underestimated your kindness. And those memories now sting differently, not because they feel guilty, but because deep down, they see how wrong they were about what true strength looks like. This is how admiration begins, not with praise, but with quiet realization. It's a psychological awakening triggered by the undeniable evidence of your growth. You see, people aren't always jealous of your success. They're confused by your endurance. They can't comprehend how you managed to rise when logic says you should have fallen. That confusion becomes fascination. That fascination becomes reflection. And reflection over time becomes silent respect. Even their behavior begins to change in small, unconscious ways. They start using your words, quoting your principles, even adopting your habits. They meditate, not because it's trendy, but because they saw it work for you. They become calmer, kinder, more introspective, not because they've suddenly become spiritual, but because your example opened a door in their mind that was once closed. And this is the hidden power of the chosen ones, transformation through presence. You never forced anyone to change. You never argued or demanded acknowledgement. You simply lived your truth consistently, and the consistency rewired the perception of those around you. That's psychology in motion. Mirror neurons, emotional contagion, subconscious modeling. Your peace literally trained their nervous systems to find regulation. Your composure showed their anxious minds what safety feels like. You didn't just inspire them. You reconditioned them, energetically and mentally, without saying a word. And the deeper truth, they needed you because beneath every act of envy lies admiration suffocating under unhealed pain. They wanted to be like you all along, but it was easier to criticize than to confront their own wounds. So the mind does what it always does. It projects. It turns admiration into sarcasm, respect into gossip, curiosity into denial, until one day that mask no longer fits. And now, as they watch you from a distance, not competing, not seeking validation, simply existing in peace, something shifts inside them. They realize they were never your enemy. They were their own. You were just the mirror that made that truth impossible to ignore. That realization is the beginning of redemption. It's where bitterness begins to dissolve into humility. And humility, when it finally arrives, becomes the doorway to self-awareness. What happens next, when they step through that doorway, is even more profound, because some of those who once envied you will begin their own awakening journey. And without knowing it, your evolution will have ignited theirs. That's where divine justice meets psychological truth, where spiritual alignment and human consciousness finally shake hands. The greatest turning point for every chosen one arrives when you finally stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start realizing they could only do what their level of consciousness allowed. That is the moment your soul becomes untouchable. You no longer crave closure. You no longer chase apologies. You no longer wait for recognition from the very people who once misunderstood your silence as weakness. Because deep down, you understand something sacred. Every wound was training. Every betrayal was divine strategy. Every loss was calibration for your higher calling. Your enemies didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They became unwilling sculptors, shaping you through resistance, pressure, and pain. While they plotted your fall, the universe plotted your evolution. And now, they watch, confused, wondering how you turned ashes into wisdom, rejection into refinement, and heartbreak into holiness. You are not who you were when they last spoke your name. They remember an old version of you, the one who still sought approval, who still tried to explain yourself, who still carried guilt for shining too brightly. But that version of you has been buried in silence, and silence was the soil where your new self took root. Now, your growth has become their silent sermon. Your peace has become their unspoken question. How did they survive? How are they glowing after all that? What did they find that I didn't? They don't understand that what you found wasn't in the world. It was within you. You discovered a hidden sanctuary inside your own being, a place where no enemy can reach and no rumor can wound. You learned that revenge is a low vibration and peace is the highest victory. So while they whispered lies, you whispered prayers. While they tried to close doors, you learned to build new paths. While they sought validation through destruction, you found liberation through acceptance. And that's why their admiration feels strange now, because it's no longer about you versus them. It's about light versus ignorance. There is a quiet power in knowing you don't have to respond anymore. Your silence has become sacred. It is not weakness, it's wisdom. It says, I have nothing to prove and nothing to fight. I am already free. And that freedom radiates. It's the reason people feel something when you walk into a room, even if you say nothing. It's the reason they replay your words long after you've left. Because your presence has become a frequency. Not everyone can name it, but everyone can feel it. Understand this. The admiration you now sense from your old enemies is not about your looks, your success, or your achievements. It's about the serenity you carry in your eyes. They see in you what they once lost: purity, purpose, connection with something greater. They see a reflection of what they could be if they stopped running from themselves. And deep down, that stirs something in them. Maybe remorse, maybe longing, maybe awakening, because your transformation is proof that redemption exists, that pain can purify, that endings can become beginnings, and that the light always returns stronger after darkness tries to bury it. The hidden blessing is this: you never needed their approval. You only needed the lesson their presence brought. They were characters in your awakening, not authors of your destiny. They served their purpose, to push you toward your divine path, even if it was through betrayal, mockery, or loss. The universe knew that comfort would never awaken your potential, so it allowed discomfort to forge your strength. It allowed heartbreak to stretch your compassion. It allowed isolation to connect you to the divine, and now, standing where you are, calm, centered, and unbothered, you can finally see that everything that once hurt you was secretly helping you. You became the proof that light doesn't avoid darkness, it transforms it. That's why your enemies can't look away. Your resilience disrupts their narrative. You weren't supposed to rise. Not after all the damage, not after all the traps. But you did. Quietly, gracefully, without bitterness. And that's why they now admire you. Because deep down, they wish they had your strength, your peace, your alignment. The most powerful souls don't shout their victories, they radiate them. You don't announce your glow up, you simply become the glow. You don't chase revenge, you embody redemption. And that embodiment, that quiet transformation, is the most humbling sermon your enemies will ever witness. So, let them admire. Let them learn from your silence. Let them take notes from your peace. You've already won in the only battlefield that matters, the one within. Because while they were focused on competing with you, you were focused on conquering yourself. And that is the kind of victory that echoes through eternity. The truth is, the universe doesn't waste pain. Every tear watered the soil of your destiny. Every betrayal became a wind that carried you closer to your purpose. Every loss was an initiation, not into despair, but into divine strength. And now that you've reached this sacred clarity, you no longer resent your past, you bless it, because it brought you here, to this calm power, this sacred independence, this state of quiet, knowing that everything unfolded exactly as it should. This is the hidden blessing of being chosen. Your light was never meant to be universally understood. It was meant to be unmistakably felt. And those who once opposed it now feel it too, even if they'll never admit it. Chosen ones. So, if you ever wonder why people who once despised you suddenly become silent, just remember this: they're not ignoring you. They're observing. They're not hating you anymore. They're learning from you in secret, because light always wins, and truth always exposes what was false. Stay humble, stay kind, but never dim your light just to make others comfortable. The universe didn't lift you this far for you to hide again. You are walking proof that divine alignment is real. Keep walking in your truth, quietly, gracefully, powerfully. This is Wisdom Path, where souls awaken and truth speaks. If this message resonated with you, share it, like it, and subscribe to join this growing community of awakened souls walking the same sacred path. Your journey matters, and your light is needed more than ever.